Welcome to episode 8 of the We'll Bring the Popcorn Entertainment Podcast. I'm Brad, this is Josh, and it's the end of February now. We're heading into March.
I know, we're 8 episodes in. I can't believe we've finally made it through 8 episodes, 2 whole months. I'm pretty excited for how things have gone so far, for sure. I don't know how you feel about it.
Terrible.
Terrible?
Like, just horrible experience.
All right, that was our last episode. See you later.
No, it's been a lot of fun. Like you can tell, we try to have a lot of fun with each other and try to keep it kind of loose. And
Sure.
It's been a lot of fun so far. A lot of learning, a lot of different things. I guess normally these are conversations that we have with each other after we see a movie or watch a show. And so putting that into a format to go with everyone else has been a little bit of a challenge, but it's also been a lot of fun. So we hope you are all enjoying it and having fun along with us.
Absolutely. And it seems like every time we do prep for these episodes, we're always worried that nothing's going to happen during the week, or maybe like one or two news stories will come out during the week that we kind of have to like find something to talk about. But we're once again in another week of a bunch of news stories breaking that we can, kind of talk about and, discuss how we feel. We don't talk about these things ahead of time. So it's actually kind of fun to have that conversation flow like in podcast form at this point.
Yeah, and we almost have too many stories again to talk about. Like we're spending a whole lot of time on news, but there's been quite a few that's come out. So probably the first one we're going to talk about is Avatar: The Last Airbender. We're going to touch on the live action series a little bit later in the show, but we also had to confirm that the cartoon series is going to be continuing in a film format. It's going to follow the gang in their late 20s, early 30s, so a little bit after, the animated series ended, before Legend of Korra starts, which, of course, Legend of Korra gave us a brief look at them a little bit older. Sure. And until you actually really started Korra, then you got, some of them a lot older. It's going to be interesting to see how that movie's going to be, especially, we had the series is 13, 14 years old or something now? Or
yeah,
is
I
it
think
even
the
older
last
than that?
The last episodes of Avatar aired in 2008, so we're coming up on 16 years of this series ending, and in all its brilliance and glory. Like we've started, some friends of mine and I have started watching, rewatching the series in anticipation of the live action series, and it still holds up. It's still a great animated series. Like it gets all the accolades of being one of the best animated series of all time, and I think it warrants that, and it still holds up after all this time. Like it's really cool that they're giving us like a kind of continuation of that story in like a feature film. And I'm really excited to see like where they go with it. Like you said, we kind of get some idea of where the gang goes after the end of the series, but like to pick it up for another movie, I'm all for it, man. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It's really curious to see what kind of story they could do, because at the end of the series, you have your main resolution is done. You're going to see them as adults now. Sure. So, what kind of conflict or issue or main, big bad or something we're going to have that, doesn't carry on to Korra, Legend of Korra, she's the next Avatar after Aang, and just see kind of what kind of interesting story they can find to fit in that doesn't, affect Korra or anything else, but, gives us a solid story to us for the gang. That'll be out October 2025 currently, so got a little over a year until we see that, but it's going to be really interesting to see how that film turns out.
Yeah, and I kind of equate it to the Dragon Ball films, like the animated Dragon Ball films that kind of become canon, don't become canon. They're kind of side stories as part of like the non-linear manga, if you will. Like it's like an offset of that, and I'm kind of hoping it's like those, because a lot of those films, like those Dragon Ball side animated movies, I think are really good and always tell a fun story, and it's kind of connected to the main story, kind of not. It kind of works its way in a little bit, but I'm hoping that's something they do with this and kind of a similar pattern. So I'm excited. We got a little over a year and a half now, like you said, October of next year. So they've been working on it apparently, because those films don't just get done overnight.
Years,
so yeah. So I'm curious as to how long they've actually been working on it, but I'll be excited when it comes out for sure.
Yeah.
So you have a beloved series like Avatar like that, but one story that broke this week that I was really excited about is the Harry Potter TV show that's going to be on Max. It's been tentatively slated to release in 2026. So we got about 2 years before it comes out, but it's getting a little bit of a mixed reaction too, because, like a lot of the people's complaints about the movies were the fact that they didn't really follow the books completely, but they're kind of loosely based on the books, which we've had that discussion on how we feel about that, obviously. But this seems to be taking a longer way to tell a similar story. What have you heard about that so far?
Yeah, I mean, doing it as a TV series makes sense, especially with how long the books are and how that is. If they do, and I'm thinking from what I've heard that they're more planning that each book is going to be a season. Don't know how much more they're going to try to stretch out, because if it turns out to be popular, do we get a few seasons for the longer books? But I'm curiously optimistic about it. I mean, Warner Brothers with the Fantastic Beasts, that people were very mixed on how they felt about those. I enjoyed them, but they didn't have that same magical feeling as the Harry Potter films did. So it's going to be interesting to see how fans react too, because are there going to be complaints that it's not enough like the movie, or did they not include enough of the book? Or are they doing too much of their own thing? We're going to hear that, but I'm curious how it's going to be, because it's also hard that, all those actors who brought these characters to life for the first time in the movies, you're going to have a whole new batch. You've got to be able to let go of Daniel Radcliffe and everybody else and let this new cast really take over and do their own interpretation of the characters, which is probably going to be hard for some.
It really is, because it's got such a hold on pop culture, even to this day, man. You talk about putting anything Harry Potter out, and it just blows up, you know what I'm saying? Like, even with like the theme parks and everything like that, and just any Harry Potter IP to this day still is incredibly popular, does incredibly well. But like you said, you're taking such iconic characters and actors that have played these films for as long as they did, and just taking it and putting it into a new entity, recasting everything and having new people tell these stories. How receptive are people going to be? And I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see how many people stick through it, because like, as soon as it comes out, it's gonna do amazing, right? Like, everybody's gonna watch it, but how many people stick through it? Whether it's how they tell the stories, do they not like the actors, do they not connect with any of that? Like, it's gonna be real interesting to see the longevity of that. Do they really get to tell the entire story? How long is Max going to stick with it? Because you hear about, these streaming services only giving 1 or 2 seasons to a show at best sometimes. Does it only get that for a litany of reasons, right? So I'm very curious to see like what it looks like, how much they put into it. I think they're going to put a lot into it up front, but I'm curious to see what it looks like.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to see some, like, especially with those who've passed away, to see someone else being Severus Snape. Both Dumbledore actors have now passed away. You have the Hagrid actor has passed away. You've had a lot of that kind of cements them as those characters even more for you. So, after they've passed away, now that it's going to be a big ask for whoever takes on those roles.
I've got a great idea for Hagrid. Liam Hemsworth. I'm totally kidding. We're not gonna do that.
Everybody in Harry Potter is a Hemsworth brother now, so
we're gonna do that.
Chris Hemsworth is Harry Potter.
Hey, why not? Let's have some fun with it. Let's get weird, right?
But it's I hope they do a good job with it, but you just don't know, how different are they going to try to separate themselves from the movies? How much are they going to try to stick to the book? And how much are they going to try to do something new and different?
Sure.
And how fans are going to react to that. Like, I'm looking forward to it, but there's still some optimism that you're kind of holding back a little bit with the optimism, just to make sure that until we start seeing stuff out of it. So if it's coming out in 2026, more than likely end of this year, early next year, we'll have to see that start filming.
Yeah, for sure.
Another one we're trying to be a little optimistic about, they actually just set the director. So Gareth Edwards, who last did The Creator, which we both really enjoyed, a fantastic original sci-fi movie. Yep. He also took on Rogue One, which was a great Star Wars film in its own right. He's now directing the new Jurassic World film. Like, he's a great director, and I'm happy to see him doing this and being the one taking it on. There still is some hesitation because they're fast tracking it. Like, when you're fast tracking a big budget sci-fi type of film, with dinosaurs and everything else, like there's a lot of time and work and effort that goes into those. So I'm hoping they know what they're doing and they're getting it right. But they have a good director to do that.
Yeah, and he seems like a director that will, kind of stick to what we need to do, get the film made, get it out, and it doesn't sound like they want a ton of fluff anyway, based on kind of we're going to make it as it's written. So it's he's got good experience, he's got a good recent track record. So to your point, I'm kind of optimistic on that too. I'm very cautious about what this is going to look like. I want to see what the trailer looks like, because these types of films that have to lean so heavily on CGI, how good is it going to look?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Is it going to look super cheesy? Is it going to look good? Is the story going to be good? I mean, there's so many things that, you can apply that logic to any film, but I know how much you and I both like the Jurassic World films, the Jurassic, Park films, the original trilogy. We hold them in a pretty high regard, especially the original, first two films, I know for sure.
And I kind of would like to see a little bit more of a return to the original Jurassic Park that had a little bit more of a, not exactly horror aspect, but thriller. You had tension. You had a lot of unknown that was going with it. Slight horror with it, not what you would consider horror. But but I would like to kind of see a return to that. Give us a little deeper, darker Jurassic Park movie would be really fun, because the new ones were definitely more over the top, action packed, a little bit more humor, a little bit this and that. So it'd be nice to maybe see it get a little more, a movie about dinosaurs being a little bit more grounded is a weird thing to say, but kind of taking it back to where it, first began. Because I'm reading the original Jurassic Park novel by Michael Crichton right now, which that book is so vastly different than the movie. I still love the movie,
of course,
and the first film, but it's so different. But it'd be interesting because it was a bit darker too. So I kind of would like to see them return to a little bit of a darker tale with the Jurassic World.
Yeah,
sequel.
I would agree with that too. So we'll keep an eye on that again. It looks like it's going to start filming relatively soon if it's going to come out next year. I mean, I don't know when they're actually going to start production on it, but you got to figure it's got to be
it's July of next year, so they've got to get going soon.
Hopefully it doesn't take them forever to shoot and then causes delays, but we'll keep tabs on it for sure. One of the things we're definitely keeping tabs on is the whole Marvel situation, the direction they're moving going forward. They've come out now and they've said they basically scrapped the title The Kang Dynasty for one of the next Avengers movies. It's actually the next Avenger film that was supposed to come out in a couple years. I'm sure if you haven't seen the stories involving Jonathan Majors being removed as Kang, and it seems like they're kind of moving away from that. Don't know where that's going to lead for this next group of Avengers that are going to come together in the film, but who that big bad is going to pivot to, I'm still kind of in the woods on who that's going to be, but I mean, there's a whole lot we don't know at this point, and we got to kind of sit back and wait for them to kind of let us know what's up.
Because they still could be using Kang with a recast or something else. We don't really know. They haven't officially said that, they're moving away from Kang, because they've spent a lot of time with Loki season 2, with Ant-Man, the Wasp, Quantumanium, setting up Kang to be this big bad. Jonathan Majors did a great job with the character. Of course, his issues in his private life is causing that to go away, which it's sad to see where he's gone, because he was blowing up, and now he's paying for, rightfully so, for stuff he did. But it's interesting to see, because Marvel has also kind of stated that they're in a little bit of a reset, not exactly a reboot, but a retooling to kind of bring the MCU and the Marvel universe back into something that they and fans both are happy with, because they know there's been a lot of fan backlash about the last few things. We've had a lot of new stuff coming out, a lot of things like we've talked about with Shang-Chi hasn't been seen in so long. We love that. Really enjoyed that movie, loved the movie, what they did with it, and then he just kind of disappeared. We have Shang-Chi 2 coming out. Potentially he's going to be seen in the Avengers movies, but we really don't know. There's a lot of characters that they came out with and set up, but they've almost spaced themselves out too much now, that we're not seeing these characters come back. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they retool the Kang Dynasty Avengers film and kind of the rest of the MCU going forward.
Yeah, and hopefully they clean it up and we get a little bit more back to they treat them more like chapters of a bigger story, right? Because with the Infinity Saga, they did such a good job of treating each individual story like it was important, but connecting it in a way that you felt that it was building to a bigger thing. And this whole recent era has been completely disjointed to the frustration of lots of people, and I'm sure even the people at Marvel, right? And it seems like they're starting to course correct, but, did they get too far out in the weeds that, they can get it back to what it once was? We'll wait and see. The jury's still out. But I'm always going to hold a little bit of optimism for these films just because they do have the track record for that. Like, we know what they're capable of. Let's see if they can get back to it.
Mm-hmm. And talking about track record, we also have DC is really starting to kick off their next era with James Gunn at the helm. Superman Legacy is going to be filming, I believe, this coming up week. Yep. And we actually heard that they're going to be filming in Cincinnati, so they're going to be coming locally here. So for those who are not from the area or don't know too much about it, our museum center is the Hall of Justice. Yep. It was used in several different comics and even one of the live action. Yes. I think the Arrowverse, didn't it use it as the Hall of Justice? So we can speculate that maybe that's what they're filming in Cincinnati, is maybe a little look at a Hall of Justice, and they're using that. But that's what we're really looking forward to, is that. But they also had kind of an off-the-wall announcement that they're doing an animated film based on the Jurassic League, where basically every superhero, villain, everybody is a dinosaur. Now, DC has been nailing films in the animated department. Where Marvel has been excelling with the live action, DC has been excelling with the animated. Absolutely. But to have kind of this really quirky, off-the-wall type animated film announced was pretty interesting, and it does have James Gunn attached to it, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's got James Gunn written all over it. He's known for making these, quirky, I don't know if quirky is the right word for it, but these, humor-based, but also, really fun, the way comics are intended to be, you know what I mean? Granted, you have your serious comics, but he embraces more of the humorous side, or more of the, kind of meta version of these, comic book stories, so give me a Justice League filled with dinosaurs. Why not? Let's have some fun with it. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt based on his track record and where he's going with, DC overall. But I'm excited to see what this film, has. So it's definitely going to be one to pay attention to, see what they do with it moving forward. For sure. But to kind of transition away from DC animated stuff to a DC adjacent property, a couple of them anyway. They announced that Barry Keoghan is going to return as the Joker in the second Batman film with Robert Pattinson. So that film's getting a sequel. Barry Keoghan, who made a very minor appearance as the Joker at the end credits of the film, is going to be the Joker in the next film, presumably the big bad for that, kind of kicking off that story with Robert Pattinson as well. I'm very excited for that because it in my opinion did better than a lot of us expected. So to see the next step that they take with that, I'm very excited about.
Oh yeah. There's been rumors of Clayface and others being a part of that one. We don't exactly have much confirmation on all the different villains, but to see him back, I'm interested to see more of Barry's take on the Joker, because like you said, we got such a minor look at him. I think we actually got a bigger look in a deleted scene. Yeah. From what it was, but very scarred up, little bit of a different take, but it's his take, and I'm interested to see more of that as you explore that dynamic between Batman and Joker.
Sure, and it's going to lead people to talk about the next Joker film that's coming out that Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga are in. And one crazy note that came out of that is the budget that was attached to this film. It's a $200 million budget, which is exponentially larger than the original Joker.
$60 million for the first Joker.
So it's significantly larger budget. But I think the one stat that blew me away about it was the fact that the budget for Joker 2 is bigger than the budget for Dune Part 2. And if you've seen anything of the trailers for Dune Part 2, and a little spoiler alert, we're going to see it this week and we're going to talk about it next week, but the trailer looks insane and it looks incredibly high budget, but this Joker film is going to cost more to make, which blows my mind.
Yeah, so from seeing Dune Part 1, knowing how many big-name actors are in this film, how many more are in it, because I think Anya Taylor-Joy mentioned at the premiere that she has some sort of role in Dune Part 2. You've got a massive, massive cast for Dune Part 2. Joker, we know Lady Gaga, and we know Joaquin Phoenix, and that's about it when it comes to big names that we know are in the film. There could be potentially a lot more, but that's kind of what we know. And it has a bigger budget.
Yeah, and it's being kept pretty well under wraps. There hasn't been a whole lot leaking as far as what the film's going to be about. I know it's going to be a little bit more music-based, obviously with Lady Gaga in it. It should be. Obviously highlight what she's good at, but like I can't imagine outside of what it costs to get them into the film what this budget could be going towards, because it doesn't feel like it's a high budget film, at least if it keeps the similar tone to the original, right? Because the original is like dark, gritty, serious, you know, serious substance to the film, which was amazing and beautiful. And what they're doing with this next one, I haven't got
the only thing I can think of is they're going to have some big elaborate sets for these musical numbers or something, and that brought up. But yeah, it's curious to see how a film, knowing what we saw in Joker 1, how does that balloon up $140 million?
Yeah, incredible. But
I'm still really looking forward to it,
yeah,
looking forward to both of these Jokers, but it's also that fragmentation that we've had with DC that, you know, James Gunn is starting the brand new DC universe, but we still have Robert Pattinson's Batman going, and we have Joaquin Phoenix's Joker going. And it's going to be curious if we're ever going to see any of that combined, or if it just stays in the other verses away from each other, and how much longer they continue. Do we get anything else after Joker 2? Does Batman, you know, Robert Pattinson's Batman end with part 2? We don't really know exactly what the plan is with these other, you know, they have another universe that they're using for these other stories outside the main DCU, but how long do they keep some of these properties going? Because you're going to have another live action Batman outside of Robert Pattinson.
Sure.
You're going to have all these other characters. Yep. How long do they keep all of those going? Because now we're going to have two different Jokers going at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's not the new Batman's Joker in the main DCU. So at some point you might have three different Jokers going in live action at one time.
So you're talking about three Jokers at that point, and let's just throw it out there and just have Mark Hamill do it. Why not? He's brilliant enough anyway.
Yeah. Let him give a live action performance of his animated Joker would be fantastic.
Why not? I would have loved to have seen that in some form in like the Flash film. Maybe they could have saved it from being what it was, but
yeah.
Either way, I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah. One that I was actually looking forward to this year was the John Wick spinoff, The Ballerina. So, love the John Wick films. They've been so much fun. The Continental series they did wasn't as well received as the John Wick movies. The Ballerina looked like it could be an interesting spinoff for it, but it's now been delayed an entire year.
Yep.
So it's supposed to be out in June of this year. Now it's June of next year, so they could add some more action sequences to it.
Yeah, and they tell an interesting like beginning to kind of talk about that type of character and those types of people in that last John Wick film. That it's definitely going to be exciting to see the spinoff. From what I was hearing, they were having issues with the amount of action or lack thereof in the film, and I think they're going back to kind of retool the story a little bit to kind of buff up the action in it a little bit to kind of give it a little more of that John Wick style to it, which I'm all for, because like you said, I love the John Wick movies. They're a lot of fun. Ana de Armas is the lead in that film, so I'm sure she'll do a fine job with it once they get it all sorted out and get it to, you know, the place that they want it. But what I'm most excited about is the film that's taking its place.
Yeah. Didn't even know it was been filmed.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and speak to it. It's The Crow, which The Crow notoriously is viewed as a cursed property, but they did announce a while back that Bill Skarsgård, obviously best known for playing Pennywise in the recent It films, is going to play The Crow. And not only was he playing it, apparently they've shot the film already completely, and it's going to come out in June, which is nuts because I've heard nothing about it, nothing about the production of the film. We haven't even seen a trailer for it yet, even though it comes out in roughly 4 months at this point, not even that, and it's coming out like right away. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, it's wild. Like you said, The Crow has been cursed. You know, everything that happened with the original, with, you know, all the sequels that they've planned and done or tried to do, and I think Jason Momoa was attached to one instance of the Crow reboot, and you know, it's been talked about for 15, 20 years of new stuff, and then all of a sudden, like, like we kind of knew that Bill was attached to do The Crow, but we never really heard that it was filming and production, anything like that. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, it's out in June 2024.
Here it is. Here's this film that we jokingly said we could never get made, and now all of a sudden it's coming out. Like, what? Yeah. Like, I'm pumped for that, but all the secrecy around the film's kind of cool. Like, we don't know anything outside of the person playing the Crow. Like, what kind of story are we going to get there? Because The Crow in itself, the original Crow, is a brilliant film. Still holds up well to this day. One of my favorite films ever. Honestly, like it's a brilliant film, and the fact that they're rebooting it and it was kept under wraps as well as it has been is, like I said, it's kind of cool because normally everything leaks nowadays. Not just like, oh, surprise, here's a new film. Like, what? Like, what the heck?
Yeah, it's one that's felt like, should it be left alone and not be touched again? But, like, here we are with another one. So yeah, I'm curious to see how they handled it. Is it a full remake? Is it a full reboot? Is it a full, like, exactly how are they handling the story? Is it related to any of the others that have come out? Like, we just really don't know anything about it other than it's out this year.
Right. And we'll obviously talk more about that as we get more details about it. But I kind of want to piggyback off of what you're talking about. Like, does it need to be remade? I don't know where to go with this. So Lionsgate apparently has come out and said they are looking to do a modern day remake of American Psycho, which, what the heck? Like
that's one of Christian Bale's like big tentpole movies that he's really known for because of that insane performance that he gave. Like, it wasn't that long. I mean, it's been a little bit, but do we really need to be rebooting this film?
Yeah, I mean, that's a much larger conversation, but like to that point, like it's one of Christian Bale's best performances. Does it warrant a reboot necessarily? It just boggles my mind. And that's, to be fair, that's not even the craziest reboot we heard about this week. Yeah, I can't even go. Tell him about the other one.
So 38 years after this movie came out, cult classic Ferris Bueller's Day Off is getting a spin-off film. So David Katzenberg is set to direct it, but it's a continuation film that is about the valets who took the Ferrari for a joyride. Like 38 years after Ferris Bueller's Day Off came out, do we really need a continuation film that's about the valets? Like, it could be fun. I hate to rag on it right away, but it's just so odd to have. You're not even rebooting it. You're not doing anything. You're trying to like do a semi-continuation based off of the valets who took a joyride.
What's the story gonna be? I'm sorry, but like, okay, like it's an iconic scene from the film. Sure, but does it warrant a sequel on its own, of its own merit? Do we care? Like, I hate to be that negative about it, but like, why? Why are we making this? And watch, you know what's going to happen just because I'm feeling a certain type of way about it. The film's going to be absolutely brilliant, and it's going to be great. It's going to win an Oscar. It's going to, change the course of whoever stars in its career. And I'm going to look like an idiot like 2 years from now or whenever it comes out. That
it's just so odd because it's been so long and you think if you're hearing something about Ferris Bueller's Day Off, it's going to be a reboot or a remake or something else like that. Yeah. But instead of a continuation off of characters that were in the movie for 10 minutes.
Yeah, a whole film. We're getting a whole film. What are we doing here?
We'll probably be there to watch it, but it's just so odd to see that kind of story come out that they're doing a movie based off it. It could surprise us and be a ton of fun, but it's just so weird for after so long that's what we get in the Ferris Bueller universe.
The fact that we even call it the Ferris Bueller universe makes me laugh.
Ferris Bueller
everything's got its own universe now. But it's one of those, in a vacuum, you just hear that story and you're like, why? What's the point? What is it? Is this necessary? Like, who's lobbying for this? Is there like some like I know plenty of people that love that movie, and it's a brilliant film. Don't get me wrong. Ferris Bueller's Day Off is a wonderful film. But are people really riding that hard for this? That like somebody thought this was a great idea and it got greenlit? Like, what the heck? You know what I mean?
And it's also, some films work great for the time period that they're released in and made in. It worked great in the 80s. Does that same type of film work in 2024, 2025. We don't have I don't think we have a release date or anything else for it. More than likely it's going to be next year or later, but does that type of comedy film work? Because, things change with the industry. So does that still work in this day and age?
Yeah, and it's difficult because, like you said, if you put so much time beyond when the original comes out that you follow up on it, does it still hold that same magic over the years? Because there's so many cases where there's a prolonged period of time between a cult classic film or like a film that's incredibly popular that gets some type of continuation that it doesn't do as well. An example I could think of, just based on films that I know you and I both love, was we both love the movie Dumb and Dumber, right? But when they made the sequel to it, yikes, it does not, like, that type of humor in a vacuum for that film for that time period is still hilarious, but when they tried to make the sequel, it was not good.
Yeah, it just didn't work.
It didn't have that same magic, and it sucks because we want it to, but I don't know. I feel a certain type of way about it now, but like I said, watch, it's going to wind up being like one of the best films of this century, and I'm going to look like an idiot in 2 years when this comes out and I'm eating crow for it, but whatever.
Even on the other side of the spectrum, we had Top Gun come back with Top Gun Maverick after almost 30 years or so, and it was fantastic, but it played off the formula that made it work before, just kind of updated our visuals and everything else with it, but, it's not a comedy. And comedy is definitely one that it can really matters of when it comes out and how it's done and how it matches. So they're going to have to update the humor and the feel of this film to match modern day, but then how connected is it going to feel? Like, we've spent way too long talking about Ferris Bueller valets.
Who'd have thought,
just
right?
like it was that odd story that gets in your head and we're like, what? Why? Who thought this would be good? But like I said, we'll probably end up going to it, loving it, and
I might talk smack, but I'm 100% going to watch this film just out of morbid curiosity, just to see like what the heck is happening. Yeah. But it is what it is. But to your point, we've talked far too long about a Ferris Bueller sequel. That's not really a sequel. Anyway, sorry. I could go off on another tangent. I won't do that. But let's go ahead and transition to our TV reviews for the week. So, Episode 6 of Masters of the Air has dropped this last week. We got to watch it. Me personally, how I feel about it, I absolutely love this episode. It's not action heavy, but we finally get, if you're following along and watching it with us, without getting into too much spoilers for those of you that haven't watched it, we finally get a little bit of resolution on some of these characters that we've had questions about for the last few episodes. What happened to them? And we get some closure in that. In some cases, some very happy closure, which made me very happy. How did you feel watching it?
Yeah, this to me was probably one of the best episodes of the series so far because of there's dramatic weight. There was a little bit of action, but it was more about, all these stories and these threads and stuff we've been following and things that, threads that we haven't seen touched on have now come back full circle. So in the episode, we kind of got 3 different stories taking on at one time. So we had Rosie and his group getting some R&R and stuff away because they've had several missions in a row. They've had some really rough missions. They needed some time. So we're kind of seeing how they try to deal with it, and especially with Rosie coming in, late into the series, and we're getting to see a whole lot more on him, how he's handling that, because he really wasn't a big fan of taking that time off. He'd rather be out there in it. And then we also got, with Crosby going to conferences and speeches and other stuff, but it had an actually interesting dynamic with, a female soldier that we meet that just kind of has a mystery to her, which I don't know if we're going to follow up on at all. And then the last one was the guys behind enemy lines. So that was a very dark, dramatic, like that was a war sequence that we got with those behind the enemy lines. And it really, all of it meshed so well together, told such great stories between them all, so well acted. Like, I really loved what they did with this episode.
Yeah, and they did a good mix of heavy subject and content matter, like dealing with, stress and wartime and how people deal with it, but also kept it lighthearted with some of the interactions with people and how people cope with, living during the war and how different people view the war even, like, to your point, like the scenes with the conferences and stuff, with the dialogue between the British soldiers and the British leaders and the American leaders, and how they view each other, and a little bit of a comedic kind of way to play off of it, but also like how people deal with being in enemy territory. Like you said, and that was some very serious stuff that they touched on as well, and stuff that, really happened to these guys. And you get that weight and you feel it and you're pulling for these guys. Like, come on, man, make it somewhere safe, like get somewhere safe. But they do a good job of playing up that tension the entire episode. And it just takes, it tells the wonderfully told story about, what these guys were going through at the time, how serious of a threat, the German opposing forces were. And one of my favorite particular scenes is with the interview that happened with the German interrogation. So well done, trying to get him to break and give up more information, and
a little bit of a cockiness to the German soldier and how he was that was a great scene.
The whole "I know everything about you," but there's still some stuff I need you to tell me to confirm kind of thing. Like, it was a brilliant scene. Watch it for that alone, just for that context, and it's so well done. I've really, like you said, it's my favorite episode of the series so far, which is saying a lot for me because I do like a lot of the action stuff and the way it's been shot, but this does such a good job at storytelling and character development all in one episode that you don't miss the fact that they're not really up in the plains, doing their jobs more or less. It's how they're dealing with the fallout and all that other stuff. So this is the episode I've kind of been waiting for the entire series to kind of hit. And it really packs a punch in the, 50-ish minutes that the episode is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, the behind enemy line part, because we don't want to give too much away about it, which characters and what it's falling with. So we're trying to be a little generic with it. So we want you to check out this show. It's well worth checking out. But that had me so gripped. Everything behind him, like the Crosby and the Rosie stuff, that was a great, like you said, great dynamic to lighten things up a little bit, give you a different viewpoint than when we went back into the heavy stuff behind the lines. Like, that just had me so gripped because you weren't exactly sure what was going to happen to these characters that you were watching, because there was a lot of death, there was a lot of changes. We saw what looked like a train for concentration camps, and we had the POW camps, and we got to see a lot of different aspects of the harder, more horrific part of that war, and it had me grip the whole time.
Yeah, it's so well told and such. I just left that episode when the credits rolled. I'm just like, man, that was incredible. That was so good. I can imagine that being an episode that gets some awards next year. I'm sure will get a lot of love. It's going to make sense. Please go out of your way if you haven't been watching along with us every week. And I know some people that have followed along with us that have reached out and told us that, their feelings about it and everything. But if you can, I know there's so many different streaming services out there right now, and maybe you wait until the season's done to check out the season in totality, but really cannot recommend, if you can swing it, putting down the money and watching this series, because it's been really well done. I'll be excited to kind of binge watch the whole thing in its entirety when it's done, to kind of see the whole story in sequential order without having to wait 7 days for an episode. But it's been so good, and we still have 3 episodes left before the season is done, and I'm beyond excited to see where they go to kind of end it in this last third of the season. So
yeah, because you get a little bit of preview of the next episode afterwards. Looks like we might get a little bit more action and stuff back in there, but there looks like there's a whole lot more drama and stuff. Sure. And after this episode, if you weren't hooked yet, which it's kind of weird 6 episodes in if you weren't hooked yet, but this is one that just makes the whole series wow. But yeah, all 6 episodes are on Apple TV Plus now to be able to be watched. 3 more episodes to go. We can't wait to see how they finish it off. And something else we checked out this week, which is a little more lighthearted, but it did go a little darker into the more war aspect of the animated series, is a live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender series on Netflix. So we did get one live-action with the M. Night Shyamalan movie.
We don't talk about that.
Most people don't want to talk about that. This series, I was pleasantly surprised. If you look at all the feedback and reviews and everything else, it's been very mixed, but I actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so one of the things to take with a big grain of salt is when you have something that's as popular as this in the animated realm, when they try to make a live action version of it, people are automatically going to have an opinion about it based on past experiences with other live action stuff, and maybe not necessarily give it a chance to tell the story of, the way they want to tell it. Mm-hmm. So with this, it's basically, in my opinion, it's going to be 3 seasons. So it's going to follow along exactly with the animated series, because this season feels, if you've watched Avatar, the animated series, is book 1, season 1. So this live adaptation, season 1 is basically book 1. So it's another telling of that, and instead of 21 episodes, it's 8. But there's a lot of filler that it cuts out that I kind of appreciate, because it kind of tells a complete linear story. I love most of the selections for the characters based on their animated counterparts. My favorite character from the animated series was Zuko. And I think the actor that plays Zuko in this is fantastic, in my opinion. I think he captures a lot of that essence of Zuko. But I love the series. I love the show so far. Like, I got hooked. Episode 2 probably was my favorite so far. And it's probably episode 2 and episode 8 if I were to pick like my 2 favorite episodes, but I thought it was a lot of fun. It keeps a lot of that lighter dynamic, like you said, that's kind of more true to the animated show. So some of the lighter dialogue, and it's not super serious. It's TV PG for a reason. So it's not a bloody, violent, adult necessarily take on it. It keeps a lot of that charm and the lightheartedness from the animated series as well.
Yeah, because you got several scenes and several interactions that definitely felt like it was ripped straight out of the cartoon and done in live action, which doesn't always work, but I felt it worked for the most part. You got to remember, again, these are majority teenage, young actors trying to do their best between taking an animated series and making it feel like an animated series, but also doing it in live action, where they're also trying to go a little darker. They're trying to tell more of the war story. There's some stuff that they cut out that would have been nice to see with some of the side stories, because it's about the growth of Aang and the group and everybody. And but overall, I thought they did a fair job. I haven't rewatched a series in a long time. I started watching with my kids a few years ago. They finished it without me because they wanted to binge watch it after they started it, so I just let them go on it. So I like that I went into it with the knowledge I had of the series, but with not having rewatched it recently, so I could take this for what it was. So taking it without, with the knowledge I had, but trying to just see it as it was, I thought they did a good job of telling a solid story throughout, a little bit more dramatic. You got some really good scenes between Aang and Zuko about their dynamic and how all that was. There's some great dynamic between Aang and Zuko that, like, his uncle was one of my favorites in the series. He's the one that kind of blended the heart and the soul and kind of the dad figure 100%. To him in there. Like, he was so brilliantly acted in there, did so good, and I felt like he was a highlight of the series.
Yeah, and I agree, and I've seen some of the criticisms of it already, like saying it's a little one note, which it kind of is in some aspects, but it's basically all about him accepting his role as the Avatar and trying to he has to be a master of all of these different elements, but he's really struggling with accepting that responsibility and kind of learning what he needs to do and who he needs to become the best Avatar that he can be. And I think they do a fine job explaining that. Could they delve a little deeper into that? Sure, but he goes on several of these different quests to, not only help people like he's supposed to, but to kind of learn more about himself and learn what he needs to do. Because to his point, he's a kid that gets trapped for 100 years and comes back as the Avatar. Sorry if you haven't seen it before, but it's kind of the basis of the story, right? So he wakes back up in this new world of all these people that he knew are no longer around. But you know what I mean? Like it's one of those stories that you have to suspend some belief to really buy into this story. And there's so many elements of it that I think that they hit really well that keep a lot of what makes the animated series so good in the live action. I think they translated that a lot better, especially better than that version that I do not like to talk about of that live action film. But I really enjoyed it. I really did.
It still had its faults and flaws and stuff. Some things it didn't do as well. Some CG at times that were really good. Other times it was really rough. And then, yeah, there are some things that you could look at that I wish we had this side story or this. Because there's just that was the big main appeal over with the animated series was it's about that relationship between the main group and the growth of your enemies and how they change and how that dynamic. But it's all about that growth of Aang and those experiences he gets. So you lost a little bit of that they cut out, but I think they did do a good job of keeping a core solid storyline that flowed really well between episode to episode. Like if you're a major fan of the animated series, you just got to go in that no adaptation is going to be perfect. No adaptation is going to be able to do one-to-one, especially with something that's animated. There's stuff in animation that just doesn't work in live action.
Sure.
And there's just stuff that maybe it's filler, maybe it's that. And you also have the creatives, they want to do their own twist. And, they never just want to take something one-to-one. They want to put their own spin or twist. And, of course, with how long it's been, too, they want to see how they can update it for the modern. Because we did kind of see Netflix talking about before that, they're trying to do their best of honoring the series, but also making it appeal to, which is kind of weird to the Game of Thrones and others fan, but you kind of get a little bit of that you get more of the war, you get a little bit darker, you get a little bit more dramatic with it. But overall, I thought they did a solid job.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm thankful that Netflix put all 8 episodes out at once so you can watch it whenever at your own pace. But if you have Netflix, please take the time to go out of your way to watch this show. We enjoyed it. We watched it very quickly. I mean, it just came out 2 days before we started filming this episode. Well, 3 days before we started filming this episode. So we watched it very quickly. It's 8 episodes. It's a quick, easy watch. There's no episode longer than like an hour and 2 minutes. So you can get through it fairly quickly. You can binge watch it and you don't have to wait weeks to see it. It's all out right now and you can kind of watch it together. So it's definitely one we recommend watching. Whether you're a fan of the animated series or not, I think if you like that style of storytelling, I think you'll get some enjoyment out of it.
Just try to go into it with more of an open mind if you are a fan of the animated series, because it is not going to be exact. You've got to try to let yourself see what they're trying to do with it and not just focus on it's not doing this, it's not doing this, it's not doing this, because you're going to ruin any chance of enjoyment you may get out of it. Try to go into it a little bit more open.
It's called an adaptation for a reason, right? It's not a remake. It's not a retelling of the same story. It's kind of an updated adaptation of a story you're already familiar with.
Yep.
So I think going into that, you could probably, I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yep.
I liked it a lot.
As did I.
So moving on to our film review for the week, we went and saw the film Bob Marley, One Love, which is the biopic about reggae legend Bob Marley, and it's a telling of. It's not his entire life. So going into it, knowing it's not his entire life story, it's more or less picking up from, he's already an established music star. It's around the time that he starts to really take off in mainstream popularity, particularly filming his brilliant album Exodus, which is by far his most popular record, and his ascent into superstardom from that point. They touch a little bit on his upbringing and some of his past relationships to kind of make where they're jumping into make sense. So it's more like a snapshot of one small portion of his life. But I thought the film did a really good job of telling the story that it did. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I thought it was a solid movie overall. Like I don't know if I expected going in that it would only mainly be focusing on that core part of his life. Because most biopics, you're getting from their childhood all the way up, which we did get bits and pieces of, but we didn't get as much as exactly as I thought we would. But Kingsley, who portrayed Bob in the movie, was fantastic. Like I thought he did such an amazing job of, all of his mannerisms with the dancing and just all of it. I thought he did a solid job. But I thought it was a solid biopic overall. I don't know where it kind of stands with all the others with it. Like I think there's some things that it could improved on with showing his story, but I mean it's also you kind of know his story, you know what's going on, but it still gets me of just this guy who was just full of positivity and love and spreading this good message, and he had such especially what they focused on in the film, like such a hard life and experience that he went through with how turbulent things were in Jamaica at the time, and just everything he went through was, how did he stay so positive as a person through all of that he went through?
Yeah, it was definitely heavy in that just you felt everything he felt, the weight of the world on personally, because he was a person that, he had his political opinions, but he wasn't a political person, but he was kind of like, we kind of need you to help unite the country because we have these two warring factions in Jamaica that are like just basically ripping apart the country, and you need to be the guy that brings us together and have this concert, but he's got people attacking his family. Then all of a sudden he becomes like a major mainstream superstar and dealing with that life and what that brought, taking him away from Jamaica. It's really well done. And, his son being heavily involved in the making of the film, I think kept a lot of the authenticity of it. And obviously it's going to be sensationalized a little bit for Hollywood purposes, which it's a biopic, it's a Hollywood film, so there's going to be a little bit of sensationalism in there thrown in, but I think they did a really good job of capturing like that magic that he had. To your point, the actor that played Bob Marley, Kingsley, he did such a good job of embodying him, especially on stage. And, not knowing as much about his personal interactions with people, I think they did a lot to capture the heart of, life in Jamaica. I think they did a really good job of telling that story, even down to the authenticity of the dialogue, which I know you and I talked about when we left seeing the film, that, hey, there are times where, I don't speak with a thick, Jamaican accent. So some of it's hard to follow if you're, not used to hearing that particular dialect, but they do a good job of keeping that culture and a lot of that authenticity and how they speak and how they interact. It's very well done, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's the only real fault I had with the movie. Like you said, at times, just because you're not used in day-to-day to hearing those really thick Jamaican accents. At times, I just couldn't understand what was being said, and it was nothing on the movie or anything me. It's just I wasn't used to hearing that very thick accent. And the other thing, I would have liked to see a little bit more of his, kind of seeing the rise to stardom and seeing exactly, because we got one scene, I guess that was supposed to be what catapulted him up, but we kind of got that, and then it was nothing else. It was, from like his first recording to he's already a superstar. So I'd kind of like to see a little bit more in that. But you said with his son, with Ziggy involved and everything, to what he put together with it, I thought it was a solidly done biopic. And so even with Kingsley, like, he kind of disappeared into Bob for me, because I even forgot that he was the big bad in the latest Marvel.
Yeah, Secret Invasion.
Invasion.
He plays. So if you've seen Secret Invasion, he is the actor who plays Gravik, who, like Brad's point, is the big bad in that show, and he completely transforms into Bob Marley here. Like he does a brilliant job, like we've said, and to your point, it's really well done. I get where you're coming from too, but at the same time with the dialogue, like, for me, it didn't really take anything away from it for me. I think they did a good enough job of, keeping the heart and the message. Like, you didn't get lost in what they were trying to say and what they were, the meaning behind their words, right?
Yeah.
Like you said. So,
and it was realistic and everything else. It was just, at times, I feel myself trying to catch up a little bit, because I'm still trying to decipher, like, did I hear what I thought I heard or this, and then I go back in. But because the supporting cast was great too. Like, there was nobody who really felt out of place or who didn't do a great job of portraying their characters. Like, I felt like everybody did a really solid acting job with this film.
And obviously the soundtrack of the film is incredible. If you love Bob Marley's music, you get to see some of the makings of some of those really popular songs that, made him the mainstream star that he became. Like, you get to see how they put a couple of those songs together, and it's so cool. So well done. I love personally the concert scenes and like how they were shot, and like how you can like feel the music like when they did it. Like, I think they did just as good a job as comparing to, say, like a Bohemian Rhapsody. It's very similar in how they put those songs together. So like, you see the creative process going and how he, wants to write this song that doesn't sound like anything else he's done before, and the experimentation. As somebody who has written music myself, like, just to see that creative process,
I love that,
get put together, it's so cool, and that's probably, in my opinion, the highlight of the film. So putting that stuff together, and then sentimentally, like Redemption Song is one of my favorite songs ever, and just hearing him just strum it on an acoustic in his backyard, just randomly singing it, it touched me, because that's one of my favorite songs, and it so brilliantly done at the back end of the film, and it was so good, man.
Yeah, like you said, I love the concert scenes, because that's where you really got to see them portraying Bob and portraying everything that was there. Because same as like Bohemian Rhapsody, when you had the Live Aid show, and you got to see Freddie and everything out there, and how closely they tried to match it up to the real, and they did a great job with the music.
Yeah, and it's a film that it did well. It did well in the box office. It was number one over the weekend that it came out. Haven't seen the box office numbers yet.
It's looking like it's number one again this weekend.
which is great. Which means the word of mouth is strong for the film still. It's definitely not going to be number one next week with what's coming up, but it's a really well done film. We cannot recommend enough going to see it. If you can see it in the theaters, please do. I imagine it'll be on streaming services fairly quickly moving forward, but it's definitely one worth checking out. Even if you're not like a big Bob Marley fan, I think the story's still well enough done that it's definitely worth a watch for sure.
Yeah, definitely worth a watch. As you mentioned, coming up this week is something that's probably going to obliterate the box office. We've been waiting since last year to see it. So the big film in theaters this week is Dune Part 2. So I think originally we were to see it in November of last year. And I was really disappointed when it got moved, because I loved what they did with Dune Part 1.
Absolutely.
Even being a nearly 3-hour movie, the visuals, like probably some of the best special effects I've seen in anything. The acting, everything, and so far what we've heard and seen so far, Part 2 is not going to disappoint. So we're going to be seeing that this week. A lot of people are going to be seeing that this week. To watch at home, we have a couple streaming movies coming out this week, with Code 8 Part 2 on February 28th, Spaceman on March 1st. Both of those are out on Netflix. I am looking forward to seeing both of those. You've got Stephen Amell and his brother with the Code 8. And, of course, you got Adam Sandler doing kind of a more serious space film. So I'm definitely curious to see how both of those do and how they are.
For sure. And I've enjoyed Adam Sandler's last couple Netflix films. I think he's kind of found his stride in the type of films he's making right now. I loved Hustle. Hustle was great. Hustle was a great film. I can't recommend that enough. Coming out on digital, a couple things that came out unannounced after our last episode was recorded was Anyone But You dropped on demand, as did Mean Girls and The Zone of Interest. So those all came out on demand, unannounced. Like, there wasn't anything, and it was just like, hey, surprise, it's here. So we were kind of surprised with that. We kind of wanted to highlight that a little bit. 3
vastly different films, because you've got a romantic comedy that's loosely based on William Shakespeare plays. Then you have a musical version of Mean Girls, which that kind of didn't do as well, because a lot of people felt like they were hoodwinked, that they didn't advertise it as a musical, but it was a musical. And then you have The Zone of Interest, which was a foreign language drama set during, I think, World War II. And very different films, but they all three just kind of, I don't ever remember seeing a release date posted, and they're like, here you go.
Yeah, here it is, right? They got to do a little bit better job of letting people know instead of just dropping it randomly on people so they can prepare for it, right? But also coming up this week on demand that's coming out is Poor Things and Lisa Frankenstein are both coming out on the 27th. So it's coming out Tuesday, February 27th. Those are coming out on demand. You can watch those as well. I'm particularly excited to see Lisa Frankenstein. I've heard some pretty decent things about it. I know we didn't go catch it in the theaters, but
a very short run.
Yeah, very short run. So it was only out for a couple weeks, but it's already coming out on digital as well. But we've also got some cool things coming up TV wise this week. One show that we've talked about already that I'm really looking forward to, it comes out on Tuesday as well, is Shogun on FX.
So ready for that.
Yeah, so excited for that. That's coming out. It's the Samurai series. It looks amazing. I can't wait to check that out. We'll talk a little bit about that next week, our initial impressions on the first episode. But also kind of some interesting reality shows coming out. One guilty pleasure that Brad and I both watch is Survivor. It's actually coming out with its 46th season on Wednesday, which is insane. It's been out forever. Still doing well. Still a very popular TV show that I just don't see that going anywhere. And then one that's completely out of left field, and I don't know where this one came from whatsoever, is Deal or No Deal Island.
Yeah.
So it's taking like the game show Deal or No Deal and Survivor and kind of pairing the two. Like one of the people that were in the trailer for the show is Boston Rob from Survivor fame. And I'm genuinely curious what this show is going to be about.
Yeah, that's such an oddball that came out of nowhere. I just remember I saw the title. I'm like, what in the world is this? And then I saw the announcement about Boston Rob being in it, being a Survivor fan. Then I checked out the trailer and like, wait, this is Howie Mandel's Deal or No Deal with the suitcases mixed with Survivor. Like, where did this idea? I'm going to watch it. I'm going to check it out. But where in the world does this idea come from?
And I think, isn't Joe Manganiello the
Yes, he's the host
of it. So, you know,
slight upgrade from Howie.
I mean, it is what it is, right?
I loved Howie. Love Howie.
Howie's great, but like, I'm out of curiosity. I'm going to record this and check it out just to see what the heck is going on with that.
So strange.
That's definitely one to keep an eye on. But that's what's coming out this week.
Yeah, that'll be on NBC on February 26th. So it's definitely going to be
the day we drop this episode. It comes out. Yeah. So check your local listings, record it, check it out. Let us know what you think. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Let us know.
Yep. So on the next episode, we're going to be sharing our thoughts on episode 1 of Shogun. We'll also be reviewing the 7th episode of Masters of the Air, and of course the big film review that we've been waiting to get to, Dune Part 2. Cannot wait to check out that film. It's going to be amazing. I already have high hopes. I don't think I'm going to be let down on that, but that's going to be a lot of fun to review next week. But also this week is pretty big for one of us because it's somebody's birthday week. So if you all don't mind, on our social posts, on our Discord, on our YouTube comments, something else, come wish this guy a happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Our episode actually drops on my birthday, the 26th. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, I know. I'm old. I'm ready to go take a nap. Every part of my body hurts all the time. That's just the nature of the beast, right? But no, thank you so much for that. And that'll do it for another episode of We'll Bring the Popcorn. We can't thank everybody enough for all their continued support, kind words, haters, all of them. You know, we appreciate everybody. Give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever you want to do. You can check us out every week at we'llbringthepopcorn.com. Find all our socials. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out anywhere you get your audio podcasts. We cannot thank you enough, and we'll see you next week.